Welcome back, everyone. Pal Ponder on Weather here. We have a huge storm about to take a serious turn with widespread flooding and damaging winds up to hurricane force wind gusts. You can actually see it here off the coast of California, now down to a 955 millibar low pressure center. And that storm will be making impact going into Wednesday afternoon and all day long into the overnight hours on Thursday with very heavy rain and widespread flooding. And we're talking a lot of power outages as well as a huge concern. At the same time today, we still have another storm still off into the southeast that has a tornado watch with it. Brought all the heavier rain into the overnight hours into the Birmingham area. Woke up this morning into Atlanta with very heavy rainfall. And we've got the snow still flying into portions of Minnesota and Wisconsin. But it doesn't end there, folks. That atmospheric river extends all the way about 6,000 miles. And we just have relentless systems heading into the day on Saturday with yet another formidable storm about to make the coastline of California with more heavy rain. And then we go into next week with yet another system and then yet another system that's going to be trailing behind that one. So if you are new to the channel and like detailed weather breakdowns on North America, hit the subscribe button and you're in. I do daily content on this channel to keep you well ahead of the storm. So let's take a look at this setup. Going forward in the last 7 days of rainfall, we've already seen a lot of rain in California. Obviously, they desperately need the rain. They're in an extensive drought for many years, so this is actually a good thing to see all this rainfall. But at the same time, it's coming in fast and furious as well, and it is going to be causing flooding. So this is some of the reports just in the last 7 days. Remember, a couple of days ago, San Francisco already received 5.5 inches of rain just in a 1 day time span. And that was the second all time since records began in 1849. But some of these mountain regions have picked up 16 inches already of precipitation just in the last 7 days. So this water, this is really saturated out here in California. But I know a lot of people have been asking me about Lake Mead. So here's Lake Mead right here just to the right of Vegas. They've only picked up about 1/10 of an inch. I'll show you Lake Mead on the map. So even though California is getting pounded with heavy rain, unfortunately this watershed is really not getting much help with these systems. And it really doesn't look like it's going to get much help going forward with these systems in the next 7 days. So let's talk about this on a widespread basis with all the impacts, mainly in California with the whole coastline there under high wind warnings. We're talking very high winds, at least 40 miles an hour, 50, 60. Some of these wind gusts could easily be over hurricane force winds with very heavy rain and then very blinding snow in the mountain regions up to at least 3 inches per hour. Some rates of up to almost 7 inches per hour at times. But down here and down to the southeast, we're still dealing with that severe weather. So we had a multi-day event and now it's finally shifting a little bit further east, but we still got the flooding concerns in portions of Alabama into Georgia with some tornadic storms still into Florida Panhandle, as well as the central and southern portions of Georgia, getting into the Carolinas, while the snow is still flying up there into Minnesota and Wisconsin, where they still got some winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings, and the snow continues to fly as well in portions of Vermont and New Hampshire and portions of Maine. So yes, the big concern is the prolific rains that are going to be pounding the coast of California today with a moderate risk. Moderate risk typically implies at least 4 to 6 inches of rainfall. This is just in the next 24 hours, folks. That's why they have all the flood watches in place and the severe flooding that could unfold with this system. These areas in yellow could pick up easily 2 to 4 inches, and typically the ones in green are about 1 to 3 inches. This is just over the next 24 hours. So this is compounding of what they've already seen. And the big impact from this system is going to be all the high winds are going to be associated with it. And that's why the concern is for the power outages that could unfold, compounding with the very heavy rain. So look at the graph in the right hand corner of the screen. Yeah, folks, that's upwards to 60 mile per hour gust, 70 mile per hour gust. luckily these 100-mile-per-hour wind gusts are hopefully remain a little bit offshore, but if they sneak anywhere in the coast, you better believe there's going to be widespread power outages with all the very high winds. That's why they've got all the extreme high wind warnings draped all along into northern and central California. And they're still dealing with some higher winds with these storms that are impacting portions of Georgia as well as the Carolinas here. So going forward, as far as the rain, as far as the severity of the rain, the most intense rain is going to be down here where they do have some severe storms. So these could be heavier rain amounts, but overall, you're looking at even higher rain amounts once you get into California. So it's not going to be, you know, like the intense rain is that they can see down here into Georgia, but this is going to be a long duration event over a 24-hour time span versus something like this could impact you for a couple hours moving forward over the next 48 hours. So this is where the rain's going to be over the next 48 hours along this area into the southeast, back into Florida, up the coastline, into the Carolinas, up into the portions of the mid-Atlantic, while much of the midsection of the country is kind of high and dry. So you're kind of in between systems, while much of California along the west coast gets impacted with all the rain. So this is the concern as well. So let's zoom in on some of these rain amounts down here in the next 48 hours. So up here, we're still dealing with all the heavier storms. That's why we have that tornado watch, and we could see some flooding. That's why we have those flash flood watches in place. So overall, a good another 1 to 3 inches potentially down here into Georgia, into the Carolinas, through portions of Virginia here, and then lighter amounts as you extend further north. And most of this will actually be in the form of snow the further north you go. But yes, the big concern is these prolific amounts, and some of these areas, that's not a misprint, folks. That's the concern. Some of these areas could pick up 6, 8, if not 10 inches in just to the next 48 hours alone up here. So that is the concern with widespread flooding, with all the higher wind gusts, with the compounding effect today and Thursday. And we could be looking at some double-digit totals is not out of the question, some isolated areas. That's why we have that moderate risk for excessive rainfall in place. But let's take you back from this storm, because this is the snow that's fallen over the last couple of days from this system that we've been talking about for 7 days, right? So this is how it unfolded around across the Intermountain West. But some of these areas actually overperformed in portions of Nebraska and South Dakota. In fact, one spot actually picked up 27 inches of snowfall with this system. So we've had some very heavy snow with this system through Nebraska, through portions of South Dakota. Now that's creeping into Minnesota, and it's continuing to fly in portions of Wisconsin. But then the southern side of that has been all the severe stuff. So this take you back through the second. Now, of course, the Weather Service Center will still be out doing surveys, but so far they have found 8 tornado reports on the second across portions of Oklahoma into Louisiana and Arkansas, and about 34 wind reports so far. And I think they'll be adding to those totals as these surveys continue to be completed. And then yesterday we had up to 10 tornadoes reported. So far it's been 18 tornadoes with this setup and a lot of wind reports. And I think the area that did overperform yesterday is we had a nasty cell that broke out into central Illinois that had those tornadic spin-ups as well, further to the north. And then of course today we've got all those storms that have shifted further off into the east, into portions of Georgia, into the Carolinas. And you better believe there'll be more tornadoes that could unfold today, and some more higher wind reports as well. So for going into Friday, this is your setup for Friday. So this is your Pacific front that just kind of cleared the airway. So this is what brought all the storms development. And so by Friday, that is safely out in the Atlantic. So we can say goodbye to that. Any colder air with this little clipper system that's going to come through could pick up some dusting, maybe an inch or two in northern portions of Illinois, as well as Indiana here. But then, of course, all the rain out west coast, that's just going to be an ongoing story off the west coast, off into Washington and Oregon, but especially into California, and then lighter amounts as you get further inland. It is going to be cold enough to be able to snow, at least in the higher elevations, into the Intermountain West. So the ski country is going to be crazy loving it. I just read a report. It's the most snow they've seen in the ski country in 40 years for this time of year. They've had an incredible snowfall out here, out into the west. So let's take you into Saturday. So here's the setup really predominantly all week long, as we have more of a zonal flow, or your zonal flow is kind of a warmer flow coming off the southwest, and you can see the sharp gradient here where it stops just to the north of there, and portions of Iowa and the portions of Illinois, Indiana, Ohio. That is the colder side. Anything south of there is the warmer side. So we took a look at the overall surface map. You can actually see that unfold, right? So you got the orange area with all the warmer winds. You got the southwest wind pulling up the Gulf moisture. It's going to miss Dallas, but it should impact portions of Houston and to Far East Texas with another kind of, light rain event that's coming into the day on Saturday. But where the air is going to be slightly cold enough, it's going to be snowing into these parts again, into portions of Iowa, into portions of northern Illinois, northern Indiana, could sneak into northern Ohio, could sneak into northern Pennsylvania. Anything south of that, just too warm for it to snow. And then, yes, of course, we have yet that other system coming in that's going to be pounding the west coast. But let's take a look at some of these lake levels, right? So let's take you back. Let's look at Lake Oroville. We have had a lot of questions on the lake since we've, a lot of the west has picked up some very heavy rain. This is the lake amounts for the past couple of years, and I stopped it right here on December the 8th. We are actually down all the way down to a 661 feet back then. So it's gone up almost 50 feet already. So it's helped out a lot with all those rain amounts I showed you just in the last 7 days, compounding what the rain's going to come. So we're still down 185 feet. Obviously, this has been a drought in California for many years. So I know this is a big event, and it's going to make a huge dent in the drought by the time all this is said and done over the next 7 to 10 days. But yes, unfortunately, it is going to be coming in with a lot of widespread flooding with this setup. So let's take a look at Lake Shasta. Back then, December the 8th, we were down to, 918 feet. Now, that hadn't gone up as much, but it still has gone up about 11 feet. But we still need a lot of help, right? We still need a lot of help. It's still going to be down 137 feet. And it's been mainly in California, because if we look at overall Lake Mead, then again, like I said, I showed you the water that's hit that reservoir, which hasn't been much. It more or less has been missing it. So we were 1,043 feet back on December the 8th, and now we're at 1,044. So we've only gone up a foot. So yes, it's helped, but I mean, we need drastic amounts in that area, and it doesn't look like most of this rain is going to be really subjected to California over the next week, and not really going to be impacting much of Vegas and really much of the Phoenix area at all. So that's still, that watershed is still down 184 feet. So they need a lot more help. So going forward, here's the setup for Monday. It's a broken record, even in the next week, with yet another atmospheric river event that's going to be pounding the coast of California with very heavy rain going to be entering the picture again, for that region. And as we go into Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, another system all along the coastline into southern portions of Oregon here, getting into northern California, creeping into central, all the way down into southern California, while the rest of the country is kind of high and dry. They're under that zonal flow. They've got not much cold air to speak of. You can actually see that red line. That's your freezing line. So anywhere below that is not even actually freezing for this time of year for January. And this is like January the 11th time frame. So there's not really much cold air to speak of across the lower 48. But there is a little snow across the northern portions of this, around that northern part of that zonal flow, like I showed you. So we could get a little bit of snow that's coming out of that region through northern Illinois, northern portions of Indiana, Ohio, and creep in a little bit, maybe even higher amounts as you go into Pennsylvania. But most of this is going to be well north, and this is the same storm that's going to be winding down over portions of Minnesota as well as Wisconsin here, and then going into Vermont and New Hampshire. But the heavier snow is all out west, especially in these mountain regions. I mean, these at least another 3 to 5 feet, if not maybe 10 feet in spots of heavy snow in the mountain regions. Just crazy amounts that are going to be unfolding across the higher elevations and the snow. So all that's going to melt eventually as well. So they're going to be adding to these watersheds, no question. So let's take a look at the northern hemisphere view as far as the temperature anomalies and where the cold air is for the second week of January. There's not much, right? All this is above average. You can actually see where the snow has fallen. That's where a little bit of slightly cooler air comes in, and it really doesn't have to be, so say, below average well north, because even average is freezing at times up here, so it can still snow, and even in temperature anomalies that are above average. But for the most part, most of Canada, most of Alaska, there's not much cold air to speak of technically as far as anomalies go for your typically almost your coldest time of the year in the first week or two of January. All the cold air is well up to the north in the Arctic. So I think things are going to be turning around, but it won't be in the next week or two. All right, so it won't be in the next week or two. We got plenty of more warm air to come, but the main concern over the next week, and this is the blend, guys, and this is why you should take this so seriously, especially if you're out in California, with all the rain that's coming for the next 2 days, and then all those series of atmospheric river events that are going to unfold over the next week. We've got amounts up to 19 inches of rainfall, and this is on the blend of all the models. So some models are actually even higher than this, right? This is the conservative model. So that is the concern of all the heavy rain and just the widespread flooding with all the rain that they've gotten right so far in the last 7 days that have saturated the soils. So all this is not going to be able to soak in. It's all going to run off, or it's all going to be just filling up the lakes and streams and all the widespread flooding that's going to be unfolding. So here's the bigger picture. Here's the zonal flow. You got the southwest winds. Most of it misses the midsection of the country. This is high and dry for the next week, right? So I think it misses more or less Dallas. I think you're 22 days in a row right now without measurable rain in Dallas, and it just misses you. If you're in Tyler, if you're in Houston, you're going to get the rain for the next 7 days. And then this is moved off into the south and all into the deep south, a little bit lighter amounts as you creep further off to the north. But all the heavy rain is going to be really taken by California into those watersheds. And once you creep inland, you can actually see much lighter amounts and then not much to speak of once you hit, say, Phoenix or in those areas into the eastern slopes of Colorado and the midsection of the country. High and dry for the next 7 days. So hey, I appreciate you guys watching. Do follow me on Instagram and Twitter as well as Facebook. I do update on daily on those platforms as well. And catch me in the next update where I protect you before and after the storm.